are handcuffed, and that's what happened last night.
The police kicked in the door, shot him twice in the chest, and he died.
Before you knew it, we had 500 families. We had over 100 volunteers calling us. We were on the phone constantly.
And I can't get, and I got one police department telling me they don't know who's in charge. I got another police department here. Everybody's got a gun, and nobody knows who's in charge. Can anybody figure out who's in charge yet? Is there anybody in charge here? Any police officer in charge? Are you in charge? I can't find anybody in charge. That's the problem.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing? Wednesday night. It's the last week of this month for NJR Live, and that means I'm going to be joined in just 1 second by Christian Perez. But before we get started, I want to make sure everybody out there that's watching and listening, whether you're doing it on YouTube, whether you're doing it on Twitter, or if you're listening to the podcast on Google Play or iTunes or Spotify, take a minute to share this out. Let people know you listen to Revolution Radio. And, help us build this thing, man. It's growing a little bit every show. You know why? Because people are doing it when I ask. So I'm going to keep asking because it's been working. And our audience has been growing. Our network has been growing. We've gotten a few more sponsors and donors along the way. And every day, Revolution Radio gets a little bit bigger. And if you're one of those people, thanks. You're a part of this thing. So thank you very much. I'm not going to waste a whole lot more time jibber jabber. We're going to bring in Christian Perez. How you doing, brother?
Doing great. How you doing, Brian?
I'm all right, man. I just got into my office, and my audience, if you're watching on video, you have to excuse me. I'm like toweling off during the show here because I didn't really. I mean, it was a warm day up here. I know you said it was beautiful out there. It was beautiful. We just got a little bit of rain, like the lightest spring. We're dying for rain up here in Maine. We're having a drought. Our aquifers are dying. Agriculture is going to start to get affected. It's bad.
Oh, wow.
But we get the lightest sprinkling of rain, just enough to make it muggy and fucking miserable and clammy and take away the enjoyment of the evening. So I stepped into my office thinking, but I'm sweating my balls off. I apologize.
Yeah, that's how I am. I was hot and cold all day today. I got off work. I was able to get off early at about 1:00. It was such a beautiful day. And then, knew it after everything got done. It was raining, and the rest of the day was just muggy. Yeah. But at least we're getting something out here. I'd rather get summer than no rain. But yeah, it was such a nice day today. I'm hoping weather sticks because summer. It's definitely my favorite. Season. I'm a summer guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm having a blast up here being outdoors and getting Maine is an outdoorsy place, man. So I spend most of my time not in a domicile right now. So
I have to say you were off strange. Not strange. I'm sorry. Strong. Get off my property vibes. I love that photo that you put on Facebook. All you needed was like a machete in the ground next to you and like maybe a rifle across your lap.
I actually
maybe a rocking chair. There you go.
I actually have a machete, and that was after I took the picture with my friend. I looked at it and said, I should put the machete in the picture. I really should have. So the next one, but it's it's Facebook.
What was the movie back in the day? Was it Jeremiah Johnson, the Mountain Man? He was out there. That's you.
I've gotten quite into because I've moved up into the Northeast, coming from New Jersey. I've moved into more of what could be considered New England. So I've gotten into a little bit of American history and understanding. And, there was, frontiersmen of the West, but there were, a lot of
the early frontier. Yeah, the early frontier wasn't the West. The early frontier was like Kentucky, Iowa. Yeah. I'm sorry, Indiana. That was the early frontier. Yeah.
Yeah, and up here in Maine, it was just basically a bunch of religious cults separated by mountains. It's basically that's what it was. I mean, they were very isolated, very cut off from each other, and so the way the revolution happened and the way it kind of took place in New England is pretty fascinating, given all these different, very strong and really wacky at times cultures. And for those of us that have ever, one of the most famous, I guess, of which would be the Puritans, which were, basically believed that you were going to hell if you were going to be happy. It was really just a crazy, like, the idea was you can't enjoy yourself here. The point of life is to suffer.
Yeah.
And the idea that this was this was a very influential church on early American culture, and to understand that it explains a lot. It just explains a lot, man.
They also believe that this was their promised land and whatnot. So there's a lot of reports of early, I don't even call them colonists, but just early settlers literally breaking into the graves of native people and stealing stuff, cups, plates, blankets, tools, because they believe that that was promised to them by God. So that even though there were people already here, pay no attention to those people, just take. And that malady hasn't really stopped, unfortunately. But
if there was ever a time to, like, we're going to jump into modern day politics, but even, and why I've always, what's up, Warren?
Hey,
what's up, brother?
How we doing, Warren? Warren always shouting us out. Thank you, Warren.
I love him. I love his loyalty.
Good guy. Very loyal. Thank you, Warren.
But looking at, I forgot, you kind of made me forgot my point because I was excited. I'm sorry. But we were talking about New England politics and how things have developed into what we have today. And that's what my point was. I certainly think that, the use of information, the use of spies, the use of disinformation, the use of telling people one thing and doing another, and all this. What was fascinating to me is how all the sides were promising all the other sides whatever they wanted, even if they promised two people the same thing. And this was especially true of the way we were treating American Indians, my apologies, Native Americans at the time. Because what they were essentially doing was going to the Indians. The British would go to the American Native Americans. God, geez,
a lot of them prefer Indian.
Well, he would go to the Native Americans and then they would say, listen, if you fight for us, we'll give you this land. And the Americans would tell them the same thing. And no matter what happened, they would never get their land. They would always, wind up the loser. And so that, that I think it's important to look at, American history through that lens, and the use of disinformation and the way they spread it amongst, the populace in all those communities, given Native American communities and these Puritan communities, the religious communities. It was always a different message by all these different manipulative people. Fascinating history, and really kind of amazing that it actually happened, really, when you hear about how it happened, because the differences that we see today are not modern at all. These are historical differences, and historical things can be looked at to analyze where we're at today. Because in some ways we haven't come that far. No.
You want to stop and say, wow, we have come far, but we really haven't. I feel like this country has always been 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I feel like somebody said that last night. It's just, that's always been the case with this country. I try to tell my students, like, I always try to, especially when I do like international relations, like, we do a lot of good things around the world. Unfortunately, we also do a lot of horrendous things around the world, so for every dollar we send to another country to help somebody, there's a dollar that's used to build a bomb that's gonna blow somebody up, unfortunately. But that's what it means to be an American. That's what it means to be somebody living in a modern republic. We have to take these things into consideration when we decide to elect politicians. But actually, before we get that, there's a couple points I wanted to make, a couple announcements I wanted to make for some of our fans out there. My wife reported this to me just before we went live. The author Eric Carle passed away today. So for those of you that are familiar with Eric Carle, he wrote The Very Hungry Caterpillar, like The Brown Bear, just a couple stories for children, children's books. These are, if you don't know Eric Carle, it makes sense because you're also not a 5-year-old learning how to read. But very influential children's author, very famous, very successful. Also, there was another death this week, and I wanted to give this guy a shout out because it was very, part of my childhood. There's a performer by the name of Samuel E. Wright that passed away this week. Who is he? He was the voice of Sebastian in The Little Mermaid. He was, I believe, the first Mufasa when The Lion King went to Broadway. And for those of us that are a little bit older, he played the purple grapes in the Fruit of the Loom commercials. So, that's who that guy was, Samuel E. Wright. But I just wanted to give those two shout outs this week because, I just figured I'd mention that. But before we get to Joe Biden, Brian, there's something I wanted to mention. And it came out this week that Amazon, right? Amazon, a company owned by Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
Hello, all the way out there in Poland. But Jeff Bezos, who just spent $500 million on his super yacht. Jeff Bezos, who has employees who are urinating in bottles, defecating in buckets, grueling conditions, low wages, the whole nine, just spent almost $8.5 billion on buying MGM. Now, for those of us that remember MGM, it's the one with the lion roaring, right? 90-something-year-old. It's literally one of the oldest production companies in the country, if not the planet. And they just dropped $8.5 billion. Bezos just dropped $8.5 billion on it. So, I mean, we talk about taxing, people sitting on their wealth. Jeff Bezos is an example of that. This pandemic has only made him billions and billions of dollars richer. I mean, he owns a newspaper. He owns production companies. He's the richest man in the world now, richest man in the United States, obviously by far. And it's just a lot of power.
Yeah. I mean, I could get into a lot with Amazon, and thanks for. I'll start by saying thank you to the shout outs before I get into my thing, so I don't lose my train of thought this time. But nice to hear from Poland. Thank you very much. I'm half Polish myself, so I always appreciate people from my native lands hopping on and bits of bites here. Insane contagion, Pon GOP, wow, Amazon is the Koch brothers lawyer. F Bezos, a little incoherent there, bits of bites, but
no, I mean, I think what he's saying. Look at the Koch brothers. If you look at Jeff Bezos, these are the wealth. I mean, the Koch brother that's still alive. These are the wealthy people that can influence politicians. I was looking at an article today that said if Jeff Bezos decided to give his employees a $15 minimum wage, right, that would in many ways shame or influence other institutions to he'll own the U.S. by the end of the century. His robot cyborg personality will. He'll become part machine. But yeah, I mean, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But this is where we're at.
Look, we all know. As far as Amazon goes, we all know I'm a bitter man, and and people that in particular people that I'm bitter with is the union movement. We recently saw the Alabama, this Bessemer election that was, touted on social media, a lot of media done about it in the press, a lot of press releases and interviews with key people. Hey, look, they were giving it a try, but then, when I first heard about it, it didn't seem like a great drive to begin with behind the scenes. And as I heard more and more of details after the failure and just the blowout loss, was that it wasn't run very well internally. And this is, it's not an isolated incident. And what I really feel the failure of labor unions is to modernize and to understand that organizing in the modern times is nothing like it was organizing in the 70s. But unfortunately, our union leadership, if you look at them, are still stuck. These are the same union leaders that kowtowed to Ronald Reagan. So when it comes time to stand up to Jeff Bezos, the only thing they know is how to get beat. And I'm sorry, to say, but the union members who are such good people and who I love dearly and who I got, the honor of working with, as a staff rep, and that part of the job I loved, and I absolutely loved working with workers because they got it. I had these conversations with union leaders about them. They didn't care. I wasn't offending anybody by talking this way about union leaders and union because they knew it was the truth. But union leaders ain't talking to working people no more. They're in Washington. And Randy Weingartner, and I'll tell you, who really started it is going back to SEIU and help me out, Pat from the editorial board. He helped me to hate this guy so much. Andy Stern, who's now making millions of dollars as an anti-union consultant for corporate America. I mean, these were the kinds of leaders that set the path for that loss at Amazon. So I'm going to bring it back to Amazon. I didn't forget where I was coming from, right?
Yeah.
So when you have working class organizations and unions, and I got a whole bunch of air quotes to put around what these so-called leaders call themselves, who only know how to get beat by corporations, you're never going to win. And I think some of these union leaders, quite frankly, just got to get old enough to retire and die off. Because they just are so entrenched in power. Their membership is so beat down. And the union I came out of, CWA Local 1033, which is run by a shit stain of a human being, Gay Palmer, they basically are so out of it. This is a 5,000, 6,000 member union. They would have less than a quorum, 75 people at union meetings. That's how, and this fucking idiot who trashes people for a living and basically is a pig spy or something. I don't know what her fucking deal is. She's either that stupid or she's intentionally destroying that labor union. But it doesn't matter because you do whatever she wants because the membership is so out of it, so put out of it, so in a malaise about what their union can accomplish that the 75 people that even do show up for a union meeting are there for the free chicken on their way home from work. It's that important to their lives. And so until we see unions modernize and quite frankly, a new generation, and this is my call out to people that want to take on, and you're tired of seeing Amazon buy companies because they're talking on CNBC right now, like spending a couple $1 billion is no big deal. MGM's a small fucking piece of the pie. It's not a big deal to these guys. Like, this is a $1.5 billion deal.
Yeah, they spent 40% more than Apple or Best.
If you turn on CNBC right now, they're talking about it like you stopped to pick up a bag of chips on the way home from work. Because that's the kind of term, that's the kind of lens the bourgeoisie look at things from. $1.5 billion isn't a lot of money, to them. They have no clue, right? So what we want to do, though, but without that representation, without a strong working class movement, then who represents us in any of this? Who's in the way of Amazon? Nobody. And the point is not whether it's a monopoly or not. The point is Amazon's too big as it is and should have been broken up under the Sherman Antitrust Act years ago. But I don't even know if our current legislation knows how to spell Sherman Antitrust Act. And I can't remember the last time it was actually used. And it's maybe only been threatened in the last 20 years, maybe 5 or 6 times. AT&T,
it's not going to happen.
The Bell breakup was the last big one I can think of. And that was 1994.
I was having a conversation with some, just a Facebook chat with some friends the other day, probably like a couple of weeks ago now. And we were talking about like Biden, like you have the Republicans vehemently like anti-union, anti-worker, pro-corporation, just throwing muck into the culture war. And then Joe Biden, it's like he gives this pro-union video and he doesn't even mention Amazon by name. Yeah. And it's like the fight is against Amazon and Joe Biden's not even like, he's not a part of that fight. Right. Like, and that was kind of the frustration. I'm just like, and this is my frustration with Democrats. It's like sometimes they have to do so little and they just don't even do it. They always lose. I mean, we talked about this months ago. And we were talking about them talking them down with the stimulus. They talked those down from 2,000 to 1,400 and then still didn't get any Republicans to vote for it. So, I mean, this is our team, quote unquote. So I mean, this is
your team, not mine.
No, your team.
I don't have any jerseys.
Set up for failure.
Well, let's the title tonight is Joe or Schmoe, right? So we're gonna go over. You've been doing your research as the good professor will always do before our shows.
I just got notes and bullet points here, but let's go
over top. What I did was I thought of this while we didn't do this in pre-show, so I'm just gonna plan it with you now because that's how we roll here.
That's okay. Radio.
Is I've got Joe or Schmoe, and I got a little column. One is Joe, and one will be Schmoe. And as you list down these little kind of topics, let's start off, for instance, and we'll decide whether he gets Joe or Schmoe for.
Okay, I don't know if I had it really like that.
Let's start off on a positive note.
Student debt. Okay, well that's a Schmoe. You just put the X right.
Yeah, of course I'm going to frame it.
Okay, so let's start off. So progressives were asking for, if not a total elimination of student debt, at least $50,000 in student loan debt. Now, disclaimer: I paid off my student loans, and you know what? I'm still in favor of student loan debt. Of course. That being said, progressives wanted $50,000 in forgiveness. Like I said, if not total forgiveness. The Biden campaign came out and said, well, we'll do 10,000, right? We'll meet you right in the middle. between 0 and 50,000, which is 10,000 according to Democratic math. But so initially that was a big thing. He got a lot of young people to vote for him because of the student loan forgiveness. And last I checked, what was the wording they gave? Biden is still waiting for the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Education to report on their review of his legal authority to forgive student loan debt through executive order. It's not going to happen, right? If you're waiting on the bureaucracy to get it done, it's not going to happen. There are organizations, I don't have the names here, but there are educational organizations, advocacy organizations, interest groups that have come out and have already said, look, you have the authority, right? So, I mean, that's the deal. If presidents do things because they want to, if a president doesn't do something, it's because they don't want to, right? And we could split the hairs as to why Joe Biden doesn't want to, but I student loan forgiveness, I don't know if it's going to come.
Why doesn't he? No, I don't. Let's split those hairs. I kind of don't want to dance around that because that's kind of what the conversation. Why doesn't Joe Biden? What's the deal, man? Like Joe, you said you were going to do. Look, he never overpromised on this one. Okay,
well,
like it's not honestly.
How much money is he getting?
Joe Biden, I can't recall, and if somebody out there got a link proving me wrong, please put it on the chat so I can tell you. But I never heard him say he was going to cancel student debt, even during the campaign.
Oh, no.
He said he might reduce it, he'll do something or whatever.
He wanted to. It was $10,000. That was the promise, that he was going to reduce up to $10,000 in student loan debt. Never 50. Never. No, that was like Bernie. That was Bernie saying he wanted to do 50,000. Biden was never on. I'll do 50,000. That's not what. No, Biden wanted to do 10, right? But even that he's not going to do. Right now, for me, $10,000 was like all I owed when I graduated, 12 years ago now. But like I said, I paid off student debt probably like 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, it's not a joke for these people. It's like the one debt that you can't default on. You always have to pay these people back. But I mean, I would say look into where we're and prominent Democrats are getting their money from. Are they getting money from the student loan companies, right? And Lee's saying $10,000 would have saved her. Yeah, $10,000. It's a lot of money. I mean, and I don't want to beat this dead horse, but like so I was born in 83, graduated, got my master's degree in 09, just as the economy crashes, right? I've lived through 2 or 3 recessions now. I've lived through a pandemic. The same people who told me that if I work and go to college, I could be whatever I want were the same people who were paying me, I think it was $19,000 a year. Right, not even a livable wage. So I mean, American students are in trouble, and it's almost a uniquely American problem, unfortunately. All down to who politicians are getting their money from.
Yeah. So
it's a Schmoe category.
All right, so Schmoe, Devil Schmoe. Let's lob a softball in on the other side to be fair, and let's go with the stimulus and the stimulus.
Oh yeah, well the stimulus. I think the stimulus is good.
Money. It's hard to badmouth people getting money.
No, look, we have to be fair. Look, he's not Donald Trump. Joe Biden is not Donald Trump, right? So Joe Biden is coming to the presidency with one of the lowest bars ever. He's not Donald Trump, right? He's not a mouth breathing jabroni who's going to spit everything through Twitter. He's a professional politician, which, for whatever that means, puts him at least a step above Donald Trump. But I'm going to say this: $1.9 trillion. I think that was necessary, and I think it's going to do a lot of good, right? Politicians are supposed to help people. I mean, it was almost a no-brainer to push that through. I could go through it here. We're talking money for education. Yeah, I mean, for me, I work in higher education. It's going to help me. My wife works in public education. It can help her. Money for smaller classes. Money for more PPE. Money for more ventilators. I got it here. $125 billion are going to public K-12 schools. Private schools are getting $2.75 billion. Colleges are getting $40 billion. So, I mean, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. Families are getting, I think it was up to $1,400 per child. So, I mean, if not more. So, I mean, it's good. I mean, we're talking. This needed to happen. We needed to pump this money into the economy. And after 4 years of Trump, we get tax cuts, spending. Now the Republicans care about deficits again. But we needed to spend money to save this country. And $1.9 trillion was good. If you ask me, it should have been a little bit more. But he specifically cut out the student loan forgiveness and raising of the minimum wage. But if you ask me, the stimulus was I'm in favor of the $1.9 trillion stimulus. That goes in the Joe category.
I don't like coming up with public policy based on personal experience. You know what I'm saying? I don't like people saying, well, we should pass a law because this happened to me. I prefer it to be related to societal ills and benefits and that kind of stuff. But I think my story is relevant, and it's relatable, I think, to a lot of other people. So, look, I have 5 kids, 4 of them qualify for this $1,000 a month child credit. I got a check, almost $10,000, and I was able to purchase some property with it. It's hard for me to sit here and be so cynical as I like to be. And, I like to say that nobody does nothing for me, and I like to hate on the government as much. But it's hard for me to honestly say that he's done nothing for me and my family, because that money was significant and it went towards some good stuff, which I'm currently enjoying quite a bit, That being said, I'm afforded privileges of being able to file taxes, and I have my immigrant comrades who don't file for taxes. There are people out there that don't have access or don't understand how to file things, and so there's a whole host of problems out there that I don't deal with in getting this money. So, I'd like to poke holes in it where I can, just because of my nature, but I think that's being overly cynical for something that's been, quite frankly, pretty good to me and families like mine. I mean, if you've been in a position where employment's been rough, you and your wife or you and your partner have been working and you're trying to raise a family, or, take care of your land or your dogs or an elderly parent or whatever, and you've gotten a beat down. I know, of course, the hard right-wing argument is this is, money for lazy people and everybody's going to be sitting on the couch. But I don't even look at it. No, I don't even look at it as quite frankly stimulus. I look at it as back wages, man. I mean, we've been suffering through poverty in this country at epidemic levels for decades, and we're owed by, and quite frankly, this money should be coming directly from, Jeff Bezos, who we just, talked about. I know I took the opportunity to bash unions, but I'll take the opportunity to say Jeff Bezos should not have over I don't know, a couple $1 million. I don't know what he's doing with all this money that's so great for everybody else. He doesn't need
movie companies.
He'll be I don't give a fuck. I mean, come on, man, like stop doing this.
I'm with you. I'm not Joseph Stalin, right? I don't want to like line people up and shoot them. But it's like, but someone like Jeff Bezos had a good idea. I mean, born rich, whatever, born rich, had it easy. Yes, all that. But he had a decent idea. So you know what? You take Jeff Bezos, you put some money in his bank account, and you give him a nice house on the beach. And you say, Jeff, you're set for life. You take those, tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars.
But why?
And you take that and you give it to people, right? No, like Jeff Bezos doesn't.
I would give him a 1976 Pinto and a shack in the woods.
No, we're communists. We're going to give him a Yugo. That's what he gets. He gets a Yugo and then, one bathroom and a shack.
Honestly, I feel like I wouldn't treat him that well. I feel he's a criminal. I wouldn't treat him well at all. No, I think I've never been.
Okay. Hey, I'm be down. Let's do it. Let's have that
conversation. I'm a prison abolitionist, but you've never heard me speak out against gulags.
It's like in that, little side note, whenever you tell people you're like a socialist or a communist or left, they say, well, what would you do to restructure society? It's like, dude, like I'm in favor of democracy. That's a conversation that people would need to have. I'm not going to say the Zionist society 3 beers in at some dinner party. You know what I mean? People are like, well, describe communism. Like, I'm 3 beers in. I'm not trying to have this conversation.
I'm just saying, I think locking Jeff Bezos in a basement and forcing him to live in his own excrement is a good start. And then we can just go from there.
I would have said maybe salt mines. But okay, at least you get some work out of them.
You get a little meeting after that. We'll figure the rest of that out. Let's get the important work done first, please. I just started the American Revolution. They didn't know what the hell kind of country they were going to found while they were fighting a revolution. They were just getting rid of the British.
Yeah, they were getting rid of the British.
Get rid of corporate powder. It's going to be a fucking mess anyway. I mean, it's not like we're going to see. I think this idea that there'll be some kind of smooth transition into socialism or anarchism or communism or whatever kind of lefty comrades we got out there trying to do things like that. I mean, the idea that there's ever a smooth transition into those things, you go ahead and pour through some history and you show me where people in power have been just like, you know what, you guys are right. You can do a better job. We're just gonna head on over here and you do your thing. It doesn't.
It only happens in small countries. It's gonna happen here, right? So they'll say, well, look what happened in Portugal. I'd be like, yeah, but like Portugal's a tiny country that was surrounded by international pressure. Like that. That's why the dictatorship gave up. It's not like, I don't know. And that's after years of repression and violence. Like people crack me up. But yeah, Yeah,
I don't
mean,
think it's ever
I
been
hear
that
on that.
nice. It may be nice on its public face, but there's somebody's kid in the basement somewhere getting threatened. That's how you saw the press conference.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, shit like that goes on all the time. CIA's gotten work done like that. I mean, that's how.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I mean, hey, we've talked about that. We've talked about the
history has shown
interventions.
people in power really don't have a lot of scruples when it comes to staying in power, or nor do they seek the consent of the people. I mean, we don't. You know, people in power feel like they have their power either from property or from money, from other things, and for the most part, don't even in our like republic, or if you want to call us a democracy or whatever, they don't seek the consent of the people. They seek the power, they seek the money, they seek the PAC funds.
Yeah. Malcolm X said that power concedes nothing without a demand, never has, and it never will. You know, and I make sure even if you don't like Malcolm X, you have to respect that quote.
He didn't.
But yeah, he did. Well, now I got it. Now you got me second guessing myself.
I may have said it, but I think he was quoting someone.
He might have. Okay,
I think that's Frederick Douglass. I think it's Frederick Douglass.
Might be Douglas, and then it might be. Yeah. Look at that. You got me. You got me. I owe you a burger.
Okay, let's think of another. All right, labor issues.
Labor issues. Let's see what I had here on
labor. We got healthcare. What else we have? We've got two. We got student debt, Schmoe, stimulus, Joe.
Well, I had housing aid. I had housing aid here.
Actually, this is something. Educate me. I haven't heard much about housing.
So, $20 billion to state and local governments to help low-income households cover back rent, rent assistance, and utility bills. So that's not bad. What was it? $50 billion to help states and localities with their homeless. $5 billion in emergency housing vouchers for the homeless. So I mean, like, stimulus is a good thing. Could it have been more? Yeah, but this is what we're getting, right? But I mean, we're talking billions of dollars in funding. This is what we needed a year ago that Trump was never going to give us.
So housing, I mean, I think one of the big problems, with housing is there's no ultimate goal or ultimate solution, because as of right now, you have millions of people with billions of dollars in either back rent or back mortgages. Now, the stimulus may have helped pay, but maybe there are some situations where people were able to come current, but that money is now gone, right? So, now what? So, I guess the question, is what's left of the current debt? What do we do with that? Of course, the landlords who don't want to work are crying that people don't know, they can't get their rent, so they can't pay their mortgages, which I don't care about, but it is a real economic issue that hasn't been addressed, right? So you can either, give the renters the money to give to the landlords, and there have been some programs like that, but there are renters not taking advantage of those programs. The system isn't working, and it is heading, by all accounts, from reports, it is heading to a breaking point. Something's going to give where millions of people are going to be evicted, or we're going to figure out a plan to bail. Like, as this country, normally the plan is, of course, it's something to take care of the landlords.
Yeah. They'll be getting paid.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. But are we going to throw millions of people out of the house and then pay the landlords? Because what's the point in that? And I think what the worry is, without at least my concern, and why I say this is a Schmoe, because we don't know what's going to happen. Are we going to have millions of homeless people, or are we not? Are we protecting people from homelessness? Are we guaranteeing housing now? Are we recognizing that it's a human right? Or are we just like, if you can't pay, that's the way it goes, and I'll see you, and there's no solution here. So he's definitely, while there's programs out there, and if you're in a spot where you need help, go for it, but it ain't working. The system is not going to hold up. Well,
yep.
Schmoe? You have two Schmoe.
I would put him, screw it. Give it the Schmoe. I mean, we need to have a national conversation on housing. We have more empty houses than unhoused people, and we're perfectly fine just leaving them. I mean, it's ridiculous. One of my one of my oldest friends lives in New Orleans. That's who I'm going to go visit next week, and he does a lot of work with the homeless in New Orleans. And he's these are people with nothing. A lot of them dealing with drug addiction, mental illness, all kinds of abuse, just people down and out. And then the police come, tear up their stuff, and throw it in the trash.
It's insane.
It's not a solution. They do that in San Francisco. Also,
why do we have a homeless problem?
Yeah, it's obscene. I mean, and then we saw it during COVID. There was this picture that came out. They had homeless people in a parking lot, sleeping in parking spaces next to an empty hotel.
Why is that even a thing in the richest nation on earth with all this room and millions of abandoned homes?
Yeah,
Why?
that's where we're at now with that. So I mean, it's frustrating. Something is going to really need to be done with housing in this country. I mean, this stimulus is good, but I mean, we're talking about people. Hopefully, they raise the minimum wage, because you asked about labor before. An increase in the minimum wage was supposed to be in the stimulus originally, that's out now. That's out now. It was supposed to be the $15 minimum wage. Didn't happen. I didn't see that as happening. Yeah. So now, I mean, I think he wants to let that go through Congress. That's not going to happen. Right. I mean, again, Republicans are united and Democrats are not united, again, as always. So, I mean, we could put that in the Schmoe category, I guess. I mean, look, the stimulus is a good thing. I keep saying that is a lot of money to good programs, but it's never going to be enough. I guess, like, we really needed to raise that minimum wage. We need to do that in this country, and we're seeing. There was like in the past week or so. Like, sorry, I was on a mini vacation, but we'll say like within the past week and a half, 2 weeks, this idea has come out of the right wing, bubble, talking about people not wanting to work. And it's absurd. People want to get paid fair wages, right? If you're paying people $20 an hour, $25 an hour, those jobs are going to go filled. But if you're still, adhering to the life the way it was before the pandemic, before people lost these jobs, you got to raise wages. I don't care if it's McDonald's or Popeyes or whatever, they can afford it. We have seen across the board that raising the minimum wage is beneficial for everyone, both the employer and the employee. It's really only I won't say a small group, but it's really only business owners that are against it. I mean, we have Democrats that are against it. Your friend Vin Gopal, the small business owner, is against a $15 minimum wage. And when he was asked years ago, this is like 2 years ago, he said, well, we're looking into it. What do you mean looking into it? You've already seen it. It works in California. It works in Seattle. Now it's working in New York City. It's working in a number of places. But whenever a politician says we're looking into it or we're going to look into it, that's a wrap. It's been shelved. That's something you're going to want to take into consideration.
Vin Gopal's never been for the minimum wage increase.
Yeah,
I mean, he said he was looking into it. He's been outright against it, and even introduced legislation to repeal it after it passed. Yeah,
it's.
But that's Schmoe. You added another Schmoe, by the way, while you were talking there about that minimum wage, Schmoe.
Schmoe. Okay, we put it in the Schmoe category.
Looking good. Can you find on your pile of topics over there? Can you find a Joe? Is there a Joe available? Are we out of Joes already?
No, I mean, but like, look.
Come on, give me a topic. Make an argument for a Joe. Let's hear.
I did. I mean, look, we're looking at $125 billion for public education. Like that's a plus.
So education, you're giving him a Joe.
Education, I'll give him a Joe.
You are. I'll be honest with you.
I'm saying this is like I don't know if I agree with the whole Joe Schmoe thing, but it's like, look. I like money. The money going to these programs is good, right? Is it enough? No, but it is good, right? I mean.
How has he been on charter schools? How's he been on charter schools? Do you know?
I don't know specifically about charter schools here, but I do know that private schools. I mean, if we're talking about private charter schools, they're getting a nice handout too. They're getting almost $3 billion, right? And charter school, for-profit charter schools. I mean, again, in a nutshell, for our fans out there, they know this. You have charter schools, the people that own these companies. They either get together in associations or privately, and they lobby politicians. Right? They pay politicians. So the reason these schools or these private schools are getting, $3 billion, and I don't think public schools should be getting public money, right? I mean, especially like the weird religious schools. I'm not down with that, right? If you're not teaching science, if you're not teaching geography, if you're not teaching history the proper way in the curriculum, I don't think you should get public funds. But hey,
very important.
That's just me.
It's very important that every child learn how to walk a dinosaur.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm glad I live in New Jersey. Not, oh my God, what is it? Was it in Georgia or Kentucky where they built the Ark Museum? Did you see that? They built a life-size Noah's Ark.
Yes,
and they got the state to pay for it.
Sure.
Could you imagine that?
Well, I mean, look, this country has that that history, man. So on education, I mean, what always worries me, and I think, I mean, yes, they pay for lobbyists, but everybody is that. Everybody lobbies. Everybody pays for lobbyists. Public schools do through unions. So that really isn't the thing. It is the busting of the unions. It is the anti-union attitude that's come through the charter system. And then you have, like I mentioned before, Randy Weingarten, who's a worthless union leader, has actually been helping charter schools get into the fray more, if anything. But it's a profit motive, and one thing I think that we've failed at is separating what's best for our children and what's best for wages and benefits and our advantages over each other, in collective bargaining, and that class antagonism is put forward as the primary way we talk about education in this country, as opposed to a lens on what's the best way to educate children. And I'm sure that in the bubble of charter schools, that good techniques and good learning methods and teachers who are good people go into charters and learn good things. And those things should be used in the whole, education, community, not be private property, because that's what happens. And so I want you to think about when you're a teacher in a private school for one of these charter organizations, and you develop a technique or come up with a learning tool that could be used to benefit our whole society, that belongs to your employer if you came up with it on company time. And your employer can determine whether or not that gets used and whether they get money for it and whether it gets copyrights, whether it gets turned into a product. And so, we see where capitalism invades and takes over what could be a magical thing, and releasing all that creative and spiritual energy, but puts a roadblock right in that front door that says that person that created that idea doesn't even have possession of that idea. Even if we're gonna have private property, it's not even the person that came up with its private property. It's the person who was compensating them for their time when they came up with the idea's property.
Yeah,
and why now that idea goes nowhere. That idea is
now
you
got to share your lesson plans.
But it's in a charter school environment, in any corporate environment. I mean, these are run by corporations who are used to protecting trade secrets.
Yeah, they'll take your intellectual property.
It's a big deal in corporate America, is making sure people don't get a hold of your ideas and your shit before you can make a bunch of money on it. But when it comes to something as precious as education, and for those of you that don't think education is important, your doctor's getting educated here, and I'm sure you want somebody who knows what it is the fuck they're doing, before they confuse your liver with your guadenoids and put the thing in the wrong place, right? I mean, you don't want morons in your country. Yeah. So to put profit above that is scary, but it's indicative of our values. So I will stay neutral, and I'll defer to your Joe rating, only because I don't know enough, but I'll just give a general.
Yeah, I'm not anti-charter school. Like, my wife and I know people that work in progressive charter schools that are like social justice minded, and that's a plus. And there are some really just foul, backward public schools in this country. In Louisiana, my buddy was telling me how a lot of people, especially around New Orleans, what private school you went to is a big source of pride, because they've systematically underfunded their public schools. Public schools are for poor people. They're for Black people. So there's this whole class distinction around private schools and what private school you went to, because after they systematically underfunded the public schools, now you have to go to these private schools. So, I mean, it's just like I always tell my wife, I say, this isn't hard. Life isn't hard. We just make it hard, right? If you funded public schools, you wouldn't need these private schools. But, we have people with their own agendas, and, they don't trust American public education.
Like anything else,
white supremacy culture.
We're seeing people use to quote, I think, quote, use the master's tools. I mean, these private schools are out there, and you're seeing, revolutionaries take hold of these things and use them, for purported good. But overall, I just can't believe in that system. I can't believe in a system of private education. It goes against, just principles, general principles of mine. So, all right. Yeah. I know we have a couple of things we got to cover. I don't want to jam into your agenda here too much, though. I know I took over with the Joe or Schmoe thing, but I'm having a blast over here. What can I say? It's a lot of fun for me. Right now, we're at 3-2. Schmoe
3-2. So Schmoe is in the lead.
What else have we? Where can we give a rating? I still got a couple of things. I mean, foreign policy is one.
Yeah, I mean, so like I was talking with a previous
maybe
guest,
that's 16 shows there, really, right?
and that's the thing. I mean, you could once you start splitting hairs, you can get into a lot of like Joes and Schmoes. But when we talk about foreign policy, I was talking with Dr. Flavio Hickel, a previous guest on the show.
Man.
He made a comment to me, and he studies presidential politics. He's always got something to say. He's one of my go-to guys when I need to pick someone's brain. And he said Joe Biden is now take this lightly, but he's in many ways trying to be like an LBJ, whereas LBJ tried to be very good on domestic policy. He ended up dropping the ball on foreign policy, right? So extending the Vietnam War is on one hand, but on the other hand, he signs civil rights legislation. So, I mean, Joe Biden, I think, is half-assed trying to do that. I don't know if he's trying to do that, but that's what it looks like. He wants to look good domestically, but internationally, it's going to be the same old song, right? So Paris Climate Agreement, which is good. The Iran nuclear deal is out the door, so forget that. But I mean, the one big issue or two big issues. One was he just said that he was going to pull soldiers out of Afghanistan by September 11th this year. So hopefully that works. To this day, I don't know how I feel about that, but that's another thing. But I feel like he really dropped the ball with Israel and Palestine. But that being said, Biden did exactly what we knew he was going to do. American foreign policy traditionally has been pro-Israel. I really think that in the past year with the George Floyd protests and people being a little bit more aware that I think that many Americans, at least progressive or liberal Americans, not conservatives, were able to make connections between how Palestinians have historically been treated and how African Americans have been treated. So we saw a lot of that here in New Jersey and New York City, all throughout the country. And I think that it's a little bit more nuanced than in the past. Obviously, there have been rises in anti-Semitism, which is not acceptable at all. But I have seen articulated criticism of Israel and their policy regarding the Palestinians. Do the Palestinians fire rockets into Israel? Yeah, I mean, but they're not like, it's not a modern nuclear arsenal that the Israelis have. They don't have nuclear weapons. They don't have an air force. They don't control the water. They don't control the money. They don't control any of this stuff. The Palestinians don't have any of that. Right. So, I mean, when people say the Palestinians, yeah, I mean, they're firing rockets, but it's after they've lost access to water, after they've lost access to job opportunities. And, Martin Luther King says the riot is the rhyme of the unheard, and that's what it is. People riot because they feel like they have no other outlet, so if it's war, if it's rioting, firing missiles, that's what it is. I mean, I don't want to see anybody get hurt, but we need to make sure that a Palestinian life is just as valuable as an Israeli life. And Joe Biden, for days, they're like, well, what is Joe Biden going to do on Israel? And then you just look at the language coming out of mainstream media, and it's like Joe Biden urges Israel to stop. You're the president of the United States, and they get $30 billion a year in aid. They are the largest recipient of foreign aid, more than any other country. I think by second, it used to be like Colombia or whatever, like that joke of a drug war, right? But I mean, it's called power of the purse, Joe. I mean, very much like the minimum wage, very much like student loan forgiveness. Joe Biden is dragging his feet with this one. Benjamin Netanyahu is a crook. He's under investigation. He had trouble putting his coalition government together. So what does he do? He picks a fight with Palestinians. Misdirection. This is typical right-wing tactics. Whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Benjamin Netanyahu, whether it's Vladimir Putin, this is what they do. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Look over here, and then distract yourself.
I have to do a little bit of a concentrate hit before I talk about foreign policy. It was good stuff. It was.
Don't expect any change in foreign policy. And while I'm on it,
well, I think there has been. There's been a significant change in foreign policy.
It's been change. I would say it's been a significant change back to foreign policy.
Well, I think that the big shift has been priorities, and what you saw with Israel, this last spurt. And for those of you that haven't,
thank you, Warren.
You need to go back a week and listen to NJR Live with Shanaz, who talked directly, from experiences and friendships. And
great interview.
Oh yeah, I mean one of our top 10 probably of all time. And
great interview. Check it out, folks.
yeah, thanks to her for coming out and doing that. And that's the kind of one where you're really grateful for the guest, because
Oh yeah,
it's a painful thing to talk about just in personal conversations, but to come out in a public forum and to share that, and to be able to share some thoughts from a young Palestinian woman who's going through this personally. It was moving for me, and I've listened to it back a couple times, and just blessed and grateful for the opportunity. So go back and listen to that. So I think, but getting to the Biden administration, one thing is, the first thing out of everybody's mouth, from a liberal, Democrats, whoever, is Israel has a right to defend itself. I mean, it's just like this knee-jerk response that you have to say it to qualify whatever you're going to say everywhere. First off, I mean, my opinion is Israel doesn't have a right to exist. So I don't even want to hear about them fucking defending themselves. I mean, we have a state with, look, what the Jewish people went through during World War II is historically one of the greatest genocides that ever happened in the history of mankind. And nobody's going to take that away from anybody. And I'm not going to sit here and condescendingly belittle that experience or the effect it's had on Jewish people. But the bottom line is that's been used as an excuse for Jewish people from Brooklyn to go and take some poor old Palestinian lady's house.
Remember,
and there's
during the war in Iraq, do you love America? Do you love America? Like, what does that even mean, guy? Like, it's yeah.
What you have is people. What you have is people, Jewish or not. I don't care. There's people not Jewish profiting and doing things in Israel because it makes money or because they have their own agendas, whatever. But you have people from Europe, essentially, who have colonized an area in the Middle East. Yeah. And you can label that however you want, but that's what it is. That's until we resolve that and define a state based on the best interest in the indigenous people of the land, then we have nothing. And so I don't want to, I hate hearing that qualifier, because it's as if the world is settled on, and if you look at, now I think the world is settled on Israel's existence, but it ain't settled to the Palestinian people and the people in Israel, the territory that Israel claims. It's not settled there. And the rest of the world, and really, look, I again, I may have my own solution in my head, but I don't think it's for me to say. But I do know the rights and the human dignity of the Palestinian people is not respected. So I don't even know how we can have a conversation about Israel, its existence, or its ability to defend itself before we have a conversation about how we respect the human dignity of the Palestinian people. And that's never going to happen.
You, Brian?
Yeah, are you here there? I'm sorry, a little bit. Oop. Can you hear me? Hang on.
Can you come in? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yep, I can hear you there. Hold on. Hey, I don't know if I'm live and Christian is having the issue with his network. I'm looking okay over here, so I'm assuming that I'm live and that Christian is having a bit of an issue. So I'm just going to go on and keep ranting a little bit on my own as we go. I'll take a minute to thank, since we have a break here, and maybe Christian will return while I give. And there he is. He's back. So there you go. Hey, man, I covered for you. It's all good.
No problem. No problem. So Warren's asking I don't teach university. I teach at the local community college here in Monmouth County, New Jersey. I'm actually an adjunct professor, not a full professor. But I mean, I got part of what you said there, Brian, and I think I want people to go home with this in the back of their heads, right? One of the big conspiracy theories about anti-Semitism is that, that there's Jews and they're plotting to just take over the world, and they're using their gold and their influence to do that. And, with Israel, it's these evil Jews, and they're using their gold to oppress these Palestinians and their power. Look, here's the reality. There's 5 million Jews in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. That is a pin drop in the amount of people that live in this country. If there's rage at violence on behalf of the Israeli government towards Palestinian people, we have to start with fundamentalist Christians in the United States, because it's fundamentalist Christians and the politicians that they support. These are the people that are supporting Israel. Jews are a small part of American support going towards Israel. The overwhelming majority is coming out of the South. Biblical literalists, biblical people who believe in biblical prophecy, people who really believe that Jesus is not going to come back until a state of Israel is created. Right, which is why, I mean, you see these right-wing types. They're very much anti-Semitic. They always give into anti-Semitism. They'll show up at their rallies. They show up at their conferences, but they always seem to just support Israel. Why? Because Israel fits into their grand scheme of how the world is supposed to end.
I think it's part of, and I remember if I go back to before, I politically developed a bit, having more sympathy towards this conflict on the Israeli side, which I'm ashamed of today. Just so you know, I was just speaking of from experience. It's just part of American indoctrination. I mean, the media. I will tell you that the media coverage over the past couple of years has been better as a younger generation speaks out more and more.
Oh yeah,
and thank God for students in this movement. Thank God for the younger. Thank God for Black Lives Matter activists taking up this cause as well. Nobody made them. They just see the natural solidarity between their causes and they've linked and that's beautiful. So thank God for those voices, because I think I'd like to say that, we have gotten the media's attention and they've at least started to say the word Palestinian people in their reports. And I'm not happy at all with the coverage. It is completely biased. It is still propaganda. It is still always Israel has the right to defend itself first talk. But they're giving deference to the pen. And what that tells me and my comrades is we got to get louder and we got to sustain this thing. Yeah. I think just like and the comparisons to the work done against South African apartheid, to George Floyd and the need for a sustained movement for the rights of the Palestinian people on a global scale. I hope this is a renewed call to arms, and that we start, marching in the streets for the Palestinian people. They need it. They deserve it. And it's not a privilege they have because they have fucking drones flying over their head every day.
Yeah. I mean, when they say again, like you say, people say Israel has the right to defend itself. It's like, yeah, of course they do, but do they have a right to take water away? Bomb people? It's again. I feel like I'm back in 2002, and it's, do you love America? America, love it or leave it. And it's like we need to have real conversations about these issues, because while we're hemming and hawing, unfortunately, people are dying. But I was looking through my notes, Brian. I do have one last schmo for you.
Okay, foreign policy though. Overall, foreign policy. No. I got a schmo for you. Plus, China kind of smacked.
Yeah. Well, here's China, and it has to do with China. Number one, he gets a schmo for Israel, and he gets a schmo for China because Trump spent 4 years blaming China for COVID, and it was China didn't do it. It didn't come from the lab. And now all of a sudden, as we're ramping up anti-Chinese sentiment, as we're dealing with anti-Asian violence in this country, all of a sudden Joe Biden is saying, oh, maybe the virus did come from a lab. Okay, which one is it? Because when Trump was president and he said it, he was a horrible racist for saying it, and it couldn't have happened. Now that Joe Biden's in office and, the original foreign policy is back in, we're ramping up the anti-Chinese sentiment. I don't know. I don't know what facts have changed in the past year, but I'm calling BS on this. I'm sorry. Joe gets a schmo for the China rhetoric. We're
just going to give him an overall schmo on
foreign policy
rather than rack up the schmoes with individual countries, because it just feels like
it's a one schmo issue.
It's a schmo for foreign policy overall. All right, we're good. What do you got? I know you had something else after that, or is that?
No, that was it. I had China. I think that's pretty much it. We're at 9:00 now anyway, but I think we're at 9. We're done. We're done. Maybe we should do more of these pro con games. This is
so kind of the big final tally.
Here we go.
Been keeping score at home. So on student debt, we got a schmo. On the stimulus, we gave him a Joe. On housing, schmo. On the minimum wage, schmo. Education, we had a Joe, but only because I abstained due to lack of understanding and knowledge on the subject.
Yeah. Any money for kids is good. That's why, any money going towards students is good.
I have a feeling, had I done some study, we may have had an argument over this, but since my lack of preparedness has shown itself, he's going to get a Joe on that one. And with foreign policy, what could have been 3, 4, maybe even up to 20 or 25 schmoes, we just gave him one for a grand total of 4-2. with clearly a schmo for the first 100 or so days in office. For
I think we keep our left wing credibility, Brian. I think we keep it coming out of this episode.
I wanted to. I guess we could, wrap. Look, I spent probably too much time fighting the Democratic Party and the establishment by trying to build an independent political party, and I worked with a lot of different parties. It wasn't just one party, and what I guess I found. And the reason why I'm here talking to you today on Revolution Radio, why Revolution Radio is what it is because, I just found that wasn't of interest to me, that it wasn't effective. And it's not that, I've turned into a Democrat and I'm never going to, and I'm pretty sure I'm never going to vote for a Democrat again. I'll probably vote for socialists and Greens and dead people. And, I like to vote for Eugene Debs as one of my favorite candidates because I honestly believe that his rotting corpse would do a better job than most of the names I see on the candidates list. So, I vote for him, and what the fuck do I care? So, but I will say that, the lack of ability for the left in this country to build an actual force that can operate outside of the Democratic Party has taken its toll on me personally, and I think it's taken its toll on a lot of other activists who have tried such a thing. And there's a lot of factors. It isn't just the left's fault. I mean, we have a police state. These groups are monitored. Political operatives are very active. Yeah. And let me tell you something, man. I saw it firsthand. I mean, you have operatives employed who have mental illness, who are put into organizations to disrupt them. They do insane things. I mean, I have personal stories of people making false police reports about me. And there's a number of things I haven't talked about in the air, only because I'm still coming to terms with what I went through on the left. And what I found is kind of the white left is what I was involved in. And, I think getting out of that environment was not just important to me personally, but I think it's gotten me into more productive things. So I think the challenge, and I know I've got an audience that may be still a little based in that, because New Jersey Revolution Radio, the original company, was built basically to promote third parties and try to get those activists involved. And why you don't hear as much of that today, even though I give some deference to a number of comrades who I respect and I like to work in the social justice, is because I wound up getting money stolen from me by about 3 or 4 people. Oh, wow. And one of those people is running for an office on the ticket right now, and everybody in the party knows they stole money from me, and nobody in the party has addressed it. And now they're running them for candidates for office, and the other person they're running with still owes me money. And so that's a personal, and again, my story ain't indicative. I saw them screw over numbers of people and just act like complete lunatics. You want to talk about cults. Some of the people I was involved with act like that's their own personal little Democratic Party. And so the lack of real organizing in an electoral scheme for the left has left us with, 4-2 Schmoe, which is, what you're going to get. And I don't know if we are serious about third parties. I guess the latest trend, the movement for a People's Party, is having a hard time getting off the ground now. And while I can give respect to some of the activists involved and say that, I care about them and their work and their past history, it just always seems to me that you're putting the cart before the horse when you get involved in electoral work, and that you really, if I have advice that I always give now, regardless if people want to hear it or not, and if you're listening to me now, you clearly want to hear it, I give it is, go build yourself a real base of support amongst the proletariat. Yeah. If you want to, if I can't talk you out of running for office someday, then let me just say this. Stop trying to run for office as the first fucking thing you do in life. Yeah. Go out and get a goddamn job. Mop some floors, organize your workplace, go hang out with some homeless people and help them with, their problems. Go get them to vote for you without raising any money from anybody. Go find people that'll give you a genuine base of support based on an issue that you can care about and that you can organize with, and then go from there. But we've got people that just look at this as it's just a profession. It's a career goal. I want to be a politician. They study for them out of college. They're recruited out of college. They're we have political recruiters all over this place looking for fresh. And I'm telling you, those people are jackals, man. I worked with them. I saw them. I talked to them.
I've seen them. Seen them here in New Jersey.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, man. I say some shit that's a little off the wall to people's ears, but fuck that if you think I'm telling some crazy shit, because this is not secondhand for me. It's not secondhand for me.
No, I when I was working with Peter, we did it. You did it. People will like when I met you at the LAN conference in like 2015, right? I mean, Peter's like people straight up told him like, you have good ideas, you need money, right? No money, you got nothing, right? I mean, there was basically that was a way for them to keep tabs on people, who's coming in, who's new. I mean, Phil Murphy was there. A bunch of other little, well-to-do snobs were there, but that's the name of the game, man.
And Pete knows, and Pete puts himself up there, and I hope he knows I love him, by the way, very much. I like Pete. Pete Jacobs a good dude.
Peter Jacob, yep.
But I think that I think he made that mistake that I was just talking about. I think he's young man, ambitious, wanted to do the right thing, but just kind of tried to run for Congress, and crazy as it sounds, that dude made some headway. If the party hadn't freaked the fuck out and flown some dickhead to run against him, and
he'd have won.
A bunch of other dickheads tried to run no names against him.
They fought him tooth and nail, and I saw I was standing there with him. I was going to those meetings with him as it was happening, right? Like I'm sitting there with him.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
but that's it. Yeah.
The question is, had Pete and so many like him, and I don't want to call out my buddy here but so many. If people hadn't focused on that congressional races first and gone and organized, old folks' homes, whatever, it doesn't matter what, build a proletarian base. That's the key.
Focus on local elections. That's what I try to tell people.
It doesn't
focus
have to
on local elections.
I don't like pigeonholing.
I'm saying like start off locally, like talk to your neighbors, try to build coalitions.
You can get into any kind of community of interest. That's what I'll say. And so the local election thing, I think, is a Democratic Party trick to keep people out of real power. Because the bottom line is, if I can go into the labor union movement and become successful amongst the working class in the labor union movement, I can run for a statewide office off the bat in a state like New Jersey. Because
go do it.
Right?
Well, I don't mean run a national election.
Right. It's not. Well, even that. I mean, the key is having a community of interest around you, not local elections. A community of interest can mean many different, and especially in 2021. Maybe if you're doing politics back before the internet, okay, local elections is one of those early spheres that maybe. But nowadays, there's all kinds of organizing that can be had outside the electoral sphere. And that's what I'm trying to stress here, is because as soon as you get involved in politics in this country, you get manipulated, you get fucked with, your principles I don't care how strong willed you are, they're going to use that strong will and that passion against you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the best you can do is build up a good defense before it happens. And when you have that community of interest, you have it behind you. When you go in as a politician, you never have a community of interest. You never have a real base of support, and you wind up doing whatever money and power wants you to do, because what the fuck else are you going to do? You start making a living now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
You become tied in.
You're long-winded. It's 9 or something.
All right, folks. Folks, please donate. njrevolutionradio.com/donate. Please give what you can. $5, $500, $5 million. Please give what you can to New Jersey Revolution Radio. It's going to go to a good cause. Unbought, unbossed. All right. We pay for ourselves here. New Jersey Revolution Radio is people's radio. Tell people about us. Share us on social media. Go on social media. Let people know. Talk to your friends about it. Say, hey, check out Revolution Radio. Check out NJRR Live. Check out Idavox Report. Check out these programs so that we can get ourselves out there. Tell 5 people, give us $5. That's what I keep saying. 5 people, $5.
Yeah. June 22nd at the Coffee House in Edison. Jessica Barocle, our friend Diane Quaz is going to be there. If y'all remember from the NJ days, she used to hang out. A retiree out of a labor union that is a part of. She runs the retirees committee. She does a whole bunch of things. Shout out to IBW 827. That's a decent union where they actually elect shop stewards over there, and got our members some good contracts. Really proud to have been on strike with them back in the day. So Diane's going to be with us on June 22nd. Christian's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Daryl's going to be there. Leah's going to be there. Are you going to be there? I really hope so. If you're in the area,
be there, folks.
Get vaccinated. I know if you don't get vaccinated, wear a mask.
Get some coffee.
Still got time left if you haven't even got your first dose. There's still time to get vaccinated, but mask up, do your thing. I mean, get out in the world. The apocalypse is over, and we're back at the Coffee House. June 22nd, 7 p.m. live. If you want to get there around 6, we may do some pre-show where I give away some, prizes and keychains and little things that we all can enjoy together there at the coffee house. Christian, that it, man?
That's it. Thanks again, Brian. Thanks, folks.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week. The IDAVOX report is off. I know that. I'm not sure if we're going to take off. I'll figure that out. I see how hard I worked this weekend. Peace. Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot to remind everybody that the police can quit their jobs now. Peace.
Thrown against the car, handcuffed, and that's what happened last night.
The police kicked in the door, shot him twice in the chest, and died.
Before you knew it, we had 500 families. We had over 100 volunteers calling us. We were on the phone constantly.
And I can't get it. And I got one police department telling me they don't know who's in charge. I got another police department here. Everybody's got a gun, and nobody knows who's in charge. Did anybody figure out who's in charge yet? Is there anybody in charge here? Any police officer in charge? Are you in charge? I can't find anybody in charge. That's the problem.